in a recent bid to stop staring at my games list and contemplating utter despair that games don't hit like they used to, I decided to crack open a box of old CD-ROM games from the 1850s. In this box was a limbless, floppy-eared creature staring into my soul. It was Rayman 2, The Great Escape. Or Revolution if you have the PS2 version. The second this confusingly weird creature caught my gaze, the memories started flowing. Oh, the memories. However, the game sustains a special place in my heart, where I believe should never ever be criticised, until I slapped off the rose-coloured glasses and decided to play. At this point, staring at a 4x3 hyper-compressed video game from the smelly cheeseland where they all look like Rayman is a much better spend of my time than perpetual and endless droves of sadness driven by my Steam games list. Anyway, that's aside from the point. Though with it being current year, computers apparently no longer have CD trays. I was unaware of this. After trying to discover if the tray was hiding in my $2,000 graphics card somewhere, I decided to troubleshoot on God's favourite forum, Reddit. As it turns out, these computers can ray trace entire games, but cannot process a 17MB CD. Nice. Eventually, I cracked the Da Vinci Code and knew the time was nigh for The Great Escape to begin. A little context before we start with the summary. Rayman 2 was released on several consoles, though I originally played the PC version and have the fondest memories from Rayman's big 4x3 nose. Fucked it. This is all well and good, so long as the monitor is also shaped like a brick shithouse. The viewing experience on 4x3 is traditional, but annoying owing to the large bars on the side of the screen. Also, their PC game uses arrow keys, which cannot be changed, so no PC port. Interestingly, the PlayStation versions, which had HD support, has voice acting?
All I need is the elixir to save my friend Clark.
Which, suffice to say, is awkward seeing as the only words I really understood from the original game was Lee the Fair and Glowbox, as it is purely subtitled Sims 4 gibberish. The acting itself is fine, but the script of the game is really delivered akin to written language. The dialogue is intended to be easily digestible by reading and internal monologuing. The delivery of the voice acting just kinda irks me, so no PlayStation ports either. This left the Dreamcast version. Although I never owned a Dreamcast, it was a native HD port with controller functionality, stable frame rate, and no voice acting. Perfect. So I booted up the emulator and made my choice. The game begins with some exposition providing some background on the environment. The game is notably different from its predecessor, ushering in a darker tone of space pirate warlords enslaving the populace of every planet. I'm vaguely confused on how they achieved this resume of evil, judging by their battle capabilities, but more on that later. I was always fascinated as a kid at how barren yet interesting they made the world of Rayman to appear. The dark undertone spawns minute details of mystery and intrigue, hoping to explore and conquer these barren lands. Yet we press on. To the title card. We are shown Glowbox being dragged past tiny cages packed with creatures wailing for help. Dark stuff, guys. The French had it pretty bad in the 90s, it seems. Finally, Glowbox is cooperatively coerced into a cell with Rayman. A great coincidence. Rayman received a full cell all to himself with a questionable excuse for integrity. After some catching up, and Glowbox not really giving one, mate, he regurgitates a silver lum to restore some of Rayman's powers. We break free and escape down a slide, but Glowbox descends down at Mach 7 speed and sends us into orbit, with Glowbox being launched to tilted towers, probably to stream Snipe Ninja, and get banned for stealing his blue hair colour. Now, quick detour if we rewind here. What were Lee and Glowbox really thinking that any of this was a good plan? To set the scene. 1. Rayman is captured and they need him back as he's their last hope. 2. The planet's core was fractured after Razorbeard's ass thunderclap. 3. Glowbox is still free after escaping when Rayman faced some pirates. So Lee decided to shove a lum up Glowbox's ass, get him captured by the pirates to hopefully be taken onto the same ship as Rayman, to then get put in the same cell as him, with a means of escaping. This plan, when I think about it, is batshit insane, with so many ways it could go wrong, but we succeed. The Woods of Light. Rayman enters the Woods of Light alone, and he's constantly harassed by a flying tutorial frog named Murphy, who gave me actual temporal tinnitus with his whispering, teaching me how to play. Relax mate, I can figure this one out. After meeting the many thousands of kids of Glowbox, we figure out Lee's being held in the Fairy Glade. Some further tutorial work introduces us to the teensies, who can't figure out which one is king until they actually need to do something useful, such as opening a portal to the hub world for Rayman to traverse the levels. The Fairy Glade. We begin in a pretty uplifting environment that slowly begins to show signs of pollution and desecration as the swimmable water turns to piranha-infested muck. Pumping oil into the ocean like a truly responsible multinational, we are finally introduced to the space pirates, camping like losers and noob-tubing us. Next is a Metal Gear Solid stealth with a banger track. Despite the countless sleeping deadly pirates, Murphy decides to whisper some instructions at 75 audible decibels to the point where the audio mixer is peaking in the red zone, thus waking a pirate up. Good going, Frogass. Bit of puzzle solving involving some PewDiePie 2013 memes, and we reach Lee. Enslaved for casting a banned spell in her last D&D game, Rayman commits first degree vandalism and destroys BP's latest oil pumping mechanism. That frees Lee, allowing Rayman to swing on purple lums. We end the level by descending through downtown London to get the true Brexit geezer experience. Pitch looking lovely today, lads. The Marshes of Awakening. Also known as Ohio, this is a swamp poisoned by the high level of Valorant players in the immediate 50-meter radius. Rayman is vaporized within milliseconds of touching the liquid due to the state of Brazilian tap water. A sad reality of modern industrialism. Following a short platforming section, I promise I didn't fail 20 times, Rayman frees Sam the water snake and proceeds to ride him through probably the clunkiest auto-scrolling level. After reaching the destination, Rayman straight up abandons this snake, who has no friends or maidens, and leaves him to return alone to the Valorant watch party. It's pretty depressing, since Rayman says he will see him again, which is a giant lie. The Bayou. After a short cutscene, we enter the Bayou, introducing the ship chase mechanic. It's a mostly monotonous level, aside from Big Guy here, which is a new enemy type, whom we politely encourage to jump off the edge. The Sanctuary of Water and Ice. By far, this level is my absolute favourite in the entire game. The soundtrack, the puzzle, the view, the vibe. It really feels like a chill area where I can dab up my bros. After some expert platforming and god-awful swimming, I had to stop and stare at the beautiful views of southern France. My 2 hours in brain training helped me finish this mind-boggling puzzle, and I was on to the best part of the game, the Celestial Slide. This epic slide lasting a huge singular minute has ironically the best soundtrack. It's honestly the best part of the game for me, even for a few short seconds, aside from Murphy bursting my eardrums for the third time. The boss, Axel, is a fierce and tough looking challenge that would require me to focus and wisen myself to all possible outcomes. One needs to find their inner chi waves to truly transcend the attack patterns and unique aura of this boss, as I'm to respect the boss, and it's over. A common theme throughout this game you can pick up is the goofy and pretty simple bosses. This googly-eyed unit is still a fun fight though, and despite the lackluster difficulty, it really shows how Rayman 2 plants much of its difficulty into the level design. After this we have the first mask and are transported to meet Pelocus, a frog-like magician dude spouting some random garbage like a Paradox dev diary, charging $407 for the new haircut DLC. The Menhir Hills. This is another solid level recognised by the introduction of the walking shell. Murphy spouts some more nonsense, and we are shown how to tame and ride the shell. After assaulting a few sleeping excuses for enemies, more janky auto-scroller, and a floating Heineken keg, we meet Clark. This elephant-sized potato decided to consume 7 metric tons of iodized metal and 304 grade stainless steel like a Matt Stoney eating challenge. Subsequently, the inedible metal has created a hole in his stomach, something we have to fix. He tells us about some place that I think is nearby Quebec or something, I don't know. Cave of Bad Dreams. Back in Ohio, I make sure to lock my car doors and go the other way. A jumping testicle with eyes proceeds to brainwash me with liberal propaganda. The Cave of Bad Dreams is a side section of Ohio, requiring Rayman to traverse Tesla headquarters with bones melted in the walls and several hostile employees. I always felt as a kid that these skulls looked more like marshmallows than anything else. Just a weird side note, nothing more. The chase slide scene, which is supposed to be tense and terrifying, is also a bit goofy. This condensed PNG of teeth stalks you down a crystal tunnel, with the greatest threat being Rayman's atrocious sliding mechanics. I don't get it with all the top hats, but Jano the ballsack just jumps and spits fire at you. Again, very simple boss, and like Elon Musk, will send interesting tweets that Rayman must counter with spoiler images, like let that sink in. After completing the pacifist run of this boss, Jano offers a choice like it's the Matrix. Save Peanut Head, or become rich. Although Rayman's Nikocado impression is a good ending, it's not the good ending. One bubbling repulsive elixir later, and it's back to Clarko. Menhir Hills. Again. Basically repeat the aforementioned activities to return to Clark, except now Rayman gives the elixir to regenerate Clark. Potato Brain with this interesting smile decides to commit more vandalism, and straight up gritties through the several timber walls. More shell rides through janky physics and apparently Diamond Head from Ben 10, and Rayman gainers off the edge to an apparent portal. I'm not sure if either him or the shell knew it was there, because if not, roll credits. The Canopy. As a kid, this Jaws-esque chase scene used to scare the piss out of me, until I realised you could basically beat the six-legged spider with invincibility frames. The more you know. After entering the mushroom biome, we are now introduced to fighting the new pirate, Red Guy. Red Guy shoots more frequently and has more health, but he's still pretty much a pushover. After a quick laugh at this pirate sign, we finally free Glowbox, imprisoned for default dancing and malfunctioning the pirate mainframe. However, Glowbox rewards us with new powers to do more damage with charge shots. Not sure where he plucked those from, and if he did have it from the get-go, why he never gave them to us earlier. I'm not convinced the pirates accidentally left a silver lump for him to eat, but again, I'm also not opposed to the idea after putting him and Rayman in the same cell. Also, these bonus levels are really annoying. Whale Bay. The consensus around water levels are quite well defined, and it's not too hard to figure out what most people think of them. Whale Bay is a hybrid level which actually turns out to be half good, as half the level is on land. Rayman's swim physics aren't the worst in the game, but he's a bit of a challenge to negotiate, especially when needing precise movements. The irony of the situation is that Whale Bay's ambience and environment is amazing. The lack of music and beach vibes are truly just relaxing to sit and enjoy, with the open ocean being an awesome landscape. It's always stuck with me that I really enjoyed how this level looks, and the stakes are raised when we find out why we're even here. Rayman's whale friend Carmen is having her blubber harvested to oil their ships and machinery. I can't understand how we go from a bloke doing a rain dance to some poor whale being actively held in captivity to be brutally farmed, but hey, impossible n'est pas français. After freeing Carmen, we pursue her and must keep the piranhas away from her bubbles as to not lose air and drown. It's not a tough section, just janky with water physics. We reach a shipwreck in the water, ironic since these are floating ships, and slide to the end. The Sanctuary of Stone and Fire. If you've ever played Rayman 2, you probably know the notorious Sanctuary of Stone and Fire to be one of the longest, most confusing and drawn out levels in the entire game. However, this was my impression when I was an infinite gamer. I hadn't honed my skills or gained the epicness I have today. No chance it would take me any time at all. I'd breeze through it at an instant. Nothing to worry about.
If you look at Let's Plays on YouTube, they're all at least 30 minutes long to beat any version of this level.
I spent about 7 eternities trying to traverse this Pandora's box of a level, and I hadn't even explored the whole thing. I nearly filled 7 solid state drives with the size of the footage. Delving into the actual sanctuary is interesting, with the re-debut of the Mighty, the Forsaken, the Destitute, the Plum. This plum has foregone its appreciation for any god or any religion, and is so battle-hardened that it legit floats on lava with no issue. Rayman uses the plums to ride through the level via self-propulsion. Also, King Murphy back again with his whispering decides to tell the player after they work out how to use the plums the tutorial information. Not only do you deafen any poor soul that has loud volume, you are also now useless at your own job. Solid Murphy, solid. 1 ear bleed later, we fight Jano's right testicle, and Rayman destroys a 1,000-year-old temple and falls to his demise. More plum parkour. Awesome. Now if you thought Axel was a pushover, the Guardian of Stone and Fire is interesting. Instead of a boss fight, Rayman is required to rotate a door several times by retraversing the latter parts of the sanctuary in a different way. Also, there is a god-awful slide which I failed over and over and over again. Finally, we have the 2 balls to activate Umbar, the walking Maui statue, and every time it walks, I just imagine the Vine Thud effect. Now again, I have to learn all of its moves and its pattern, and it's defeated. Voluntarily. It walks straight into the orange juice, off to go join Jimmy Beast on Beast Reacts of the latest war crimes. All Rayman has to do is jump on its head, and it decides to end its journey there. Honestly, I'm not even phased. Half of my playtime and this video has been dedicated to this stupid sanctuary, and we finally get the second mask. The Echoing Caves. Old mate remembers to lock the door behind him, so now we have to find 4 switches to proceed. This level does have cool pathing, needing to go separate ways to unlock the switches, which Rayman 2 does well. Haha, plum. After the 4 switches have been hit, time to descend into said Echoing Caves. Filled with Hulk's piss, Rayman must light more Heineken kegs to traverse the area. This level also has a cool secret passage to the Fairy Glade. I'm pretty sure this is the only time this sort of passage appears in this version, which I would have liked to have seen it more. It kind of creates some continuity amongst the levels, but hey, can't really Doctor Strange my way into the Ubisoft offices in 1999. Unfortunately, I ape-brained and forgot to record it, but it's just a side part of the level you usually can't access. The rest of the level is more Ace Pilot movement. Cool Easter egg, you can see the ship that is about to robo-pirate shit all over your day in the next level. And if the reminder isn't enough, time for a bonus level. I neglected to mention them up until this point, but mainly because I just either skipped them or completed them easily. But man, I don't know what is wrong with me, but I struggled to even complete the first half of the bonus. Basically, you're a baby Glybox and have to race some imbecile pirate to reach a ferry first, and if you win, you get Rayman either full health or golden fists. Now sounds all good and well, just button mash and succeed. For a kids game especially. Well, clearly I'm a special outlier. Fuck it, I give up. It's too much spamming. Well done, Bung. Great effort there, son. The Precipice. The Precipice is mainly an auto-scroller like the Bayou, with some idiot spamming projectiles or Rayman. Aside from these red shells, as opposed to the yellow Chad shells, these virgins just appear from the physics-breaking barrels that just run full speed at Rayman. Remember kids, don't be a virgin red shell, be a Chad yellow one. The most notable part of this level is definitely the soundtrack. Don't know what big Eric was cooking when he did this, but man, the Precipice is a banger. The auto-scroller part of the level lets you mindlessly vibe to the music, which is pretty cool. The top of the world. Probably the funniest intro cutscene to a level, we see an epic POV meme of Rayman entering the level, and have probably the most awkward and lifeless stare down in gaming history. After politely cajoling the gentleman off the edge, it's chair time. Again, just janky auto-scroll, but not as bad as Sam the Snake, who, as an update, we are yet to go visit. Teensy escorted, gaming achieved. The Sanctuary of Rock and Lava. Anytime Sanctuary is in the title, you know you're in for a questionably good time. Well, you weren't in the version I used to play, unless I have dementia. Not much rock and lava yet, funnily enough there was more in the Sanctuary of Stone and Fire. Just lots of hentai tentacles. I have a few, let's say troubles negotiating the Flying Flower, which may have been my fault, but of course I blame the game, because if I didn't, it would be my fault. Can't be having that. Finally, after spending a quarter of a millennia on that section, I make it to the rocks and lava. No plum though. This section has some platforming until you reach the end of the level. Let's go. Boss fight time. Or not? No mask? No boss? What the fuck? Beneath the Sanctuary of Rock and Lava. You cheeky little Frenchies. Absolutely bamboozled us all. There was a second level all along. After the exact same teensy encounter for the third time, it's time to descend further into the Sanctuary. Rayman is plot-holed into receiving new powers, which allow him to fly. Okay, bit random, but I guess it's cool. I wonder how they incorporate this into the rest of the game. The flying is actually pretty cool though, and requires the player to be pretty precise with movement, as Rayman carries a lot of momentum. Also, if Rayman takes any damage, he's knocked out of his flying animation, so little room for error. Rayman identifies as an Apache attack helicopter through an awesome flying sequence, with a massive lava tube, with orange juice copiously flowing from the ceiling. After floating for a while, we make it to the end of the level, or so we think. In traditional Ubisoft Rayman 2 goofy fashion, the boss appears in probably the most awkward and comedic manner that I suppose was intended to be a tense and shocking moment. But the googly eyes and the complete colour change of Axel, I just couldn't take it seriously.
Oh my god.
After being coward punched to certain death, we cut to find Rayman cannot fly anymore. Wow, what a great ability we had for about half a level. Thanks Ubisoft, very fun. We encounter big Fouch. I don't know. Again, not a very intricate boss fight. Just parkour until you can legit impale the poor guy's skull with stalactites. Boss completed, and Master 3 obtained. Tomb of the Ancients. Dropkick Pirate informs Lord Farquaad of Rayman's progress, and he is ecstatic with how far we've come. Turns out Clark was captured, and he's being administered a technical checkup. Not ominous at all. We have to hit switches to raise rib cages from Hulk piss, because apparently that's how rib cages work. Starting off right, we take 4 damage out of a cutscene because the game is broken, and we barrel ride down some toxic waste. After another Fortnite player drops from Season 17, I decide to plug walk into the funny stool-infested liquid, acting under no other volition than my own. Finally, we meet with the locals of the ancient times, zombie chickens. Also, apparently I completely missed a hidden wall, but man, I just wanted to go say hello to Clark. Hence the electrified doorway, and I was very intrigued by it. Here, you can see the Wild Caveman, googling about an over 20-year-old game, because he has no idea how to get past this electric wall. More stellar barrel platforming from myself, and a mini-boss against this guy who's actually harder than half the Sanctuary Guardians. We finally reach the technical checkup room. A large room with buttons and Clark on the floor. I can only imagine what this could be. Rayman decides to show his first ounce of emotion as Potato Head runs at Mark II speed to squash us before realising that this is a boss fight. Turns out Clark is on a massive acid trip controlled by Dropkick Guy using the contraption I thought was pretty funny at the time. He's got a cool backpack. I was just watching him. What the fuck's this? What's this guy? He's tweaking, bro. Clark goes sicko mode and looks like a literal scrotum, which we need to euthanize. After tickling scrotum chin with lasers and heavy artillery, we finally free him. A keen eye like my own would spot the two major gaping holes left in Clark's back. Also, I was noticing how Ubisoft's entire bank account budget went into designing Rayman and his physics, while Clark and the gang were relegated to single flattened PNG images. Off we go, to get angry at the bonus level again.
Oh my god, dude, fucking hurry up. Get to the end, please.
The Iron Mountains. Onto my least favourite level of the game. The level starts off pretty well, funnily enough, with me losing one of my golden fists like an absolute legend. From an internal reactor to a cool floating section through a valley or ravine leads us to this awesome gap in the mountains where a hot air balloon is stationed. We hitch a free ride to I assume the top of the mountain, for Rayman to just gainer off the side, plummeting to his eventual demise. Instead, we land on this weird island with a mentally deranged robot chicken, accompanied by the sweet cries of the blue dodgeball kids I really want to hurl off the side of the map. I vaguely remember a secret beneath these rocks, which reminds me that curiosity always kills the cat. To which I respond by completely ignoring the lesson I just learnt and repeat the exact same mistake to slightly more success. I decide that finally, enough is enough, and go for the hat trick of stupidity and do it again, and losing my very important 3 golden fists. My caveman intellect is tested another 2 times until I finally concede after losing not only my golden fists, but also a fifth of my health to some random rock. Rock 5, bung nil. I'll get you one day, Rock. Inside the Reformatory for Disturbing Children, aka the Twitch Influencer House, it appears the Neanderthals are learning, but alas he's no match for my diagonal movement. Then starts a shell section where apparently Shell Dude can run on all surfaces. Since some time, not too sure when that happened. I decided to become an ICBM warhead and target the children to limited effect, and have to then redo the entire shell section again. I think there's something wrong with me because I was mentally going for a record on how many stupid deaths I could achieve on this level, because it was actually astonishing. I finally freed the kids so they could run and get trampled by the chicken, which I felt a bit of FOMO from. So instead of finishing the level, I decided to return to the rock and do the exact same thing as before, and ended up with me also being trampled. So make that rock 6, me nil. I finally give up and throw in the towel, because I remember that the level only gets worse from here, so time to move on. Back in the Valorant watch party, Rayman commits Grand Theft Auto as Craig the Pirate left a ship unlocked when he went on Smoko break. We meet possibly the most annoying sounding character in the game, being Uglet. Sad that pirates stashed all her kids in the mines. Although it is a cool feature to fly the ship, it has possibly got to be the jankiest, spatially unaware and disorienting experiences in the entire game. And that says a lot. After collecting the first patch of children taking no damage, I begin to come under fire from a window? What? I come to the consensus that a no damage run would be far too easy, so I make sure to give the pirates an extra chance by absolutely ramming the ship into a pipe and repeat this feat a few too many times. After immediately getting lost and doing a circle back 17 times to the beginning, I finally decide to take a bit more damage and find the remaining mine. We return to Uglet with her children. Owing to the gate cutscene I remember seeing at the start of the level, I was finally ready to fight the boss of half an hour's work. I was wondering, what could this be? What elements? Stone and fire's been done, ice and water's been done, lava and rock's been done. What could possibly be next? That was my thought process until this random child decided to vomit up the last mask. Are you kidding me? The boss, apparently, was flying that abomination of a ship around the narrowest ravine to rescue some random kids, and after all the sanctuary stuff I had done for the other 3 masks, all the work and effort, this random Glowbox child just found and ate the last mask. I really think Ubisoft gave up at this point. Returning to Ballsack Guy for a final time, he is at last awakened after taking too much ketamine. Finally, Polocus can banish the pirates and destroy them forever, and cast Razorbeard to forever play League of Legends as we all live happily ever after. He can't do anything in the air? What? So you're telling me that the plot hyped up Polocus to be this all-powerful being, but when the air enters the chat, it appears his journey ends there? So Rayman is then shoehorned right back into the thick of it after already literally saving the world. Though we do get this so-called maximal energy, which I'm 100% convinced is Polocus spouting some garbage to get us back to continue. the prison ship. Lord Farquaad gets scammed into buying Pacific Rim on VHS. After some suspicious dialogue, Razorbeard pays in Dogecoin, and it's on to more sliding. Yay! This time there is lava and death pits everywhere, and traps all waiting to eviscerate Rayman. I also made a conscious effort to collect all the lumps, until I missed one at the start of the level, and decided I'd collected enough. My persistence is undeniable. Finally, I delve into the ominous glowing pit and find Mustafar from Revenge of the Sith. I get jumped by this fire-bending tin can who has an astronomical amount of health, and who also has invincibility frames, and jumps out of view every time it's damaged. Golden fists. I'm sure these will survive until the final boss. Flick a switch, get a shell, that's what they say. So time to fly? Man, Ubisoft just keeps pulling new features out of their ass with this one. Thank the lords that Murphy does not talk and simply shows us the controls, which I completely ignore and continue to complain how you can't rotate the shell.
Oh, fuck off!
It appears I took the prize shell sections for granted, because I had to redo this entire section one too many times.
Oh, you fucking bastard, man.
My anger may have also gotten the better of me on multiple occasions, but, like I said, my persistence is undeniable. A few interactions with some solid timber pillars, and we make it to the trench run rip-off section. Now as a kid, I was flabbergasted at how to dodge these lasers appearing from apparently Narnia, and proceeded to get dumpstered on every single time. It wasn't until I watched the speedrun and discovered the trick was...
As you're moving, they will not hit you.
What an absolute travesty. After finishing majority of the level, I decided to redo it again and really feel like I'm Batman. Rayman commits more vandalism, freeing the slaves of the land that appear to be all of Glowbox's kids, some teensies in prison uniforms, and this random ass bird. I don't remember this scene being in the original PC version, so it's a kind of nice addition, but also feels kind of odd. But that's my opinion, and it is objective, so guess that's that. After saving their life, Rayman decides to completely abandon all the prisoners he just saved, and they can go free fall off the side of the Buccaneer, as I have no idea how they're getting off the ship. The Crow's Nest. Jokes aside, I always love this zooming shot of the ship in this desolate space to really put in perspective how large the Buccaneer truly is. Mr. Krabs enters obese Bumblebee and targets Glowbox, who I assume has the rope shoved up his ass, since I'm not sure where else it is tied to. After a short elevator ride up to the Crow's Nest, a wild Rayman appears, which Lord Farquaad just completely ignores, and opens fire with a war crime of a bomb, and completely obliterates myself and Glowbox. And here marks the end of Rayman. May he not be subjected to ever becoming a side character for some stupid rabbits and fall into obscurity. Just kidding, he's back in the game. And we get a better shot of the rope up Glowbox's ass as he hangs over the edge. Honestly, the boss isn't too bad of a final fight. It puts up a much better slog than any of the shitty Guardians, with me requiring actual brain neurons firing to figure out how to beat him. The Transformer shoots bombs which have to be redirected as a means of damage. But surprisingly, the Grolgoth goes full Dark Souls 3 boss dodge mode and can sidestep all of the bombs. His cycle also includes some Donkey Kong ass jumping trying to squash Rayman, and laser balls from his feet. After getting the hang of the bomb returns, it's onto phase 2. Razorbeard throws a fit and destroys half the nest, as we sit there default dancing until we also decide to follow him. Coerced by the floor, of course. Instead of falling into lava and respawning at the start of the level, Lee decides to finally be useful again, and sends a plot hole which escorts us to some random ass shell that's just been sitting here since about 2002. I also discovered where Marvel stole the Thor Love and Thunder kid's face meme from, and somehow made it look worse with $1 billion budget, compared to a game made with a couple baguettes and some mime dudes. Rayman eventually hangs up the Discord call with his kitten, only to perform the funniest and most awkward turn and see the danger behind you shtick for the 13th time this game. I don't know why he has his mouth open like a soy jack, but hey, you do you, man. Luckily, I remember an Easter egg which involves flying to the very top of the boss arena and slamming straight into the wall and exploding. Which I tried again and remembered you have to hold a specific button, which I had no idea which one. So like an idiot, I pressed every button on the controller to decent effect. This leads Rayman to a secret tunnel with a few obstacles that gateway to a secret ability of infinite ammo. Pog. Now I know people will complain and say I cheated. Do I have the patience to go back and forth for 40 minutes flying this janky shell, most likely into the wall several times? Probably, but I don't want to find out. Don't worry though, the game punished me anyway by deciding I didn't really immerse myself in the boss fight enough, and froze right at the end, meaning I had to do the entire fight again. Luckily though, I save state scummed at the start of phase 2, like a legend. After defeating him, Razorbeard, like a greasy, angry little COD player, decided to equip Martyrdom on his class, as he was salty and wanted to end my kill streak. The entire ship explodes, eviscerating millions, and most probably Glowbox as well, as they had no way of escaping. Back in La La Land, where everybody does nothing, the discount Avengers were all downtrodden with the apparent demise of Rayman. only being able to recover a single shoe. However, plot armor and it being also a kids game meant old Ray Dude hobbles from around a tree to the embrace and excitement. The game was finally over. Although it is a bit of a cliche cutscene with the fireworks like we just defeated the Galactic Empire on Endor, it was definitely a nostalgia boner moment where I felt happy I decided to come back and play this entire game again. Rayman had saved the city and is now the hero of the village, unlocking better trades and a funny achievement. Finally, after a fair few hours, the game was over. After completing Rayman 2, that same soulless contempt in my heart was reborn as another game was over. However, it gave me some time to really consider my experience and some thoughts and ideas regarding my opinions. The controls of Rayman 2, as you probably realise from my strong ideas, are janky at times. Of course, this is a game from 1999, and they didn't quite master the idea of camera control yet, but they did a pretty good job. However, the camera is probably the most annoying part of the game, unilaterally speaking. The forbidden noise is this abrupt trigger stuck in my head as the camera gets locked and I have no clue how to see where I'm going. The camera is controlled mainly by movement rather than by joystick, so you can imagine negotiating your vision can get troublesome. After a while though, it's pretty easy to get used to, and one can start to get better at controlling Rayman to allow the camera to do the work for you, especially while strafing. Another annoying section is the auto-scroll levels. From Sam the Snake to the stupid chair, Rayman 2 has awkward momentum. I always found myself either over or undercompensating for my movement, never being able to find that perfect balance. Obviously Ubisoft wanted these sections to be difficult, but I find difficulty and arbitrarily locking movement doesn't really correlate. Some sections do play better than others, but this is always up to a random chance. In terms of the music, the soundtrack for Rayman 2 is amazing. For a dated game, it's criminally underrated, with some awesome tracks, especially the Celestial Slide and Cave of Bad Dreams. Rayman 2's character development and emotion are largely reliant on the audio cues, with tense story scenes being accompanied by gritty and serious music, while more uplifting sections have bubbly and extravagant tones. Partnered with the in-game sound effects really helps immerse into the world and gives areas their own personality. For example, the Fairy Glade slowly transitions from a fun and clean region into a murky, pirate-infested glade, and the sound slowly builds to this crescendo seamlessly. It also recognises its limits, with some sections having no music at all, letting the ambience take precedence. I always find myself returning to this playlist and going through the nostalgic associations I have. Each track never fails to remind me of a different memory from a level or from when I was younger, being so diverse in their creation. Although some of the more underutilised tracks start to amalgamate, most levels sound starkly diverse, with no two tracks being the same. This also translates with the in-game sound effects. The collection sound for each lum is different, giving each type a unique resonance. The collecting of health, finding a checkpoint, and registering a yellow lum all appear very sound. Get it? Further, the sounds of enemies are distinctive and carry notoriety. The robotic clangs of the pirates really set the scene, stemming from their scratchy growls and clunky stomping. Ubisoft did a great job in ensuring friend and foe sound vastly different, to ensure that encroaching plague of pirates feels like a foreign sound for the world. The natural beauty of waves, birds and other miscellaneous sounds are starkly challenged by the alien and metallic pirates. Finally, the story. Rayman 2, like stated above, is a much darker tale in comparison to Rayman as a franchise. The other installments focus on humorous and comical recounts, having limited darker tones to heighten story progression. Rayman 2 does a complete 180, prioritising a time-critical and intense concept comprising of imprisonment, despair and loss. The starting scene sets the account immediately, claiming treachery and enslavement aplenty. With little hope, the stakes are set at the grand requirement for, title card, a great escape. Following the introduction, small increments of joyous and innocent tones are incorporated into the story, which supplement a recount that is increasingly dark. It treads the fine balance between a game wanting to be edgy and unique to avoid being the same old story, while still appeasing younger audiences and having the feel-good moments. Personally, I think the tone and story is a unique blend which works very well throughout most of the game. Keyword, most of, as some sections do create a bit of confusion for both progression and tone. The traditional convention of guardianship and items of power are a generally cliche MacGuffin trope. However, the final mask's delivery never really sat right for me. After all the effort progressing the sanctuaries to worryingly questionable boss encounters really set the precedent for Rayman 2. Do a sanctuary, beat a boss, get a mask. Therefore, the fourth mask would usually follow that same system to deliver the final test. However, this was simply not the case. I saw here or there that the game was faced with many time constraints, which is understandable, but the kid munting up the mask is a bit of a cop-out. I never could see this scene and accept it, as I found it quite outlandish and random. Yes, Rayman does have plot holes, like randomly being able to fly and a shell sitting in a massive lava pit. Unfortunately, the mask scene irks me, and I could never really resonate with it. The Iron Mountains is an awkward level, to say the least, with it being stationed in 3 vastly different locations, which always felt loosely stitched together and forced. This was unlike other levels, which understood the logical progression from light to dark or vice versa. However, it seems Ubisoft did correct this in Rayman Revolution, by adding a boss fight of wind and air. This is also a goofy fight and a third reskin of Axel, but creates that enjoyable feeling of finally beating all 4 Guardians and acquiring all 4 masks, rather than a kid finding one in a mine. Another slight issue with the story involves the ending. The scene of Rayman freeing the prisoners is a real feel-good and rewarding moment. However, I always thought the cutscenes suffered from tonal dissonance. Not because freeing the prisoners is the issue, but what follows. It seems Ubisoft just chucked characters that appeared in numbers, such as teensies and glowbox kids, and birds, and trapped them in cages to qualify the slave numbers. However, if you watch the opening cutscene back, the prisoners croaking and moaning for help are not the same creatures Rayman frees in the same hallway. I think the dark and depressing overcast of the pirates and their prisoners was perfectly encapsulated and motioned by the opening scene. We never truly knew who or what was crammed in the cages, a melancholy concept. Therefore, getting the chance to be inside the Buccaneer again was always part of the intrigue, as it's never a fully explored area but some flying and sliding sections. However, this is then sort of ruined by showing Rayman break out the captives for some cheap light-hearted fun, and realising that these prisoners and the ones he frees are not the same. Obviously this is very nitpicky, but I can't not suggest it after all the praise I gave the game. Finally, a small section on dialogue. This game is not for voice acting, and the later renditions show this fact.
All I need is the elixir to save my friend Clark.
However, the written language is also a bit questionable. This game was made by the French national team right before Zinedine Zidane did the funny headbutt, so kudos to them for the great translation. But you can really see the cracks occasionally. Talking about kudos, Rayman frees a bunch of slaves and they say kudos for him, which doesn't really feel appropriate considering what happened. Also, Lee's dialogue comes across often as forced, constantly droning on about hope and Rayman being a pretty good bloke. Otherwise, the story is a strong and enjoyable experience. Rayman 3 is probably the closest rendition, but focuses a bit less on the darker side of events. I haven't fully played Rayman 3 before, so I'm not too sure what happens next, though I know the story is much different. To conclude, it was very fun to return to such an important part of my life and especially my childhood. Rayman 2 was the first game I ever played and can comfortably recall, so I assumed it was fitting to have it feature as the first video on this channel. Some sections of the game were not as I remember, but I can confidently say that I returned to a game that still kept me hooked and intent on completion, even over 20 years later. The game is able to remain engaging and rewarding, which I know would make young Bung proud. It's crazy how this all spawned from me simply finding the old PC disc case, but I'm very happy I did stumble across it. Now I know this has been a long-winded video, so thank you everyone for sticking around if you did. I also encourage you to try this game if you ever get the chance to really enjoy the archetype of so many current games in their infancy. I reckon games today take a lot of influence from creations of the past, and it's important to reflect and appreciate the simplicity and ambition of the creators that architected our childhoods. So even if you don't want to or can't play Rayman 2, try playing, rewatching, or even reflecting on games from when you were young, and feel free to share your stories or experiences below. It always amazes me how people can have vastly different prior experiences, but still be able to resonate and sympathise on a topic such as gaming. Also, feedback and comments are always welcome, as this project has become much more drawn out than previously anticipated, and I hope it's up to standard. Now when I was young, I didn't really know what was next for Rayman after The Great Escape, and nor do I know what is next for this channel. But now what I do know for sure is that whatever is may not only be a decently rated third game, but something far worse.